Fasten your seatbelts, everybody. Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears is running for governor, and it's going to be fun. Plus, we discuss what to make of this whole controversy over President Trump's recent statements on abortion. And last but not least, the Richmond Times Dispatch smears parental rights movements as Christian nationalism. We've got something to say about that. Welcome to Speak Up Virginia, equipping you to speak up on the life, family, and freedom issues that matter most to you. From the Family Foundation, I'm your host, Candi Cushman, with our president, Victoria Cobb. Welcome, everyone. Glad to have you with us for Speak Up Virginia. You know, we've got some exciting news today. You probably saw the headlines. Lieutenant Governor Winsome Sears is running for governor.
Yeah, we're excited. And, she may not be the only person that enters this race. It's still very early yet, but we're excited. She, when you think about who she is and what she's already done, I think most specifically, of course, about how she rose to be lieutenant governor, because think about this. I mean, her and Governor Youngkin won right after Virginia had actually just voted for President Biden the previous year in pretty strong, painful numbers. And so it's actually kind of neat to see how they were able to turn the state back to red. And she was a big part of that. And she also, the first time that she ran for the House of Delegates was pretty significant. This is a long time ago. A lot of folks don't remember that was the case. But she had literally came in and beat out a 20-year incumbent. And it was the first Republican to win a majority-minority district. So, yeah. I mean, she's kind of legendary. Like, she sort of does these first. She's also the first female Black lieutenant governor. Yeah. Like, all of that is pretty cool. So, yeah, I'm excited to see it happen. Now, she's going to have formidable opposition. We know Abigail Spanberger is already in as kind of the cleared the field candidate in the Democrat world. So we kind of know who her opponent will be. Whether or not she'll have a primary is what we don't know. Who else might jump into the Republican? Some people, I'll just mention this, speculate that our Attorney General might be considering that. And he did put out a statement saying, look, I'm focused on November, and kind of I'll decide after that is kind of what it said. I mean, I'm summarizing, but essentially. So.
Well, I did just want to share a clip of the video that Winsome Sears put out when she announced, but I will just mention that her story is pretty interesting personally, with her coming to this country from Jamaica as a little girl and just being in the Marines. I mean, it's all pretty fascinating.
She's kind of done it all. I mean, business owner, military, immigrant, like all of it. It's just an amazing American story, which I think she highlights well.
Yeah, so let's just watch some portions from that.
More than 60 years ago, a man came to America with $1.75 in his pocket and a dream of a better life.
His dream was my beginning. And that little girl, that was me, Winsome Earl Sears. Like my father, I never backed down from a fight.
As an immigrant, mother, a United States Marine, a business owner, and now, as your lieutenant governor, I'm living the American dream.
Just like in the Marines, we can either choose to improvise, adapt, and overcome, or we can risk falling backwards.
Extreme liberal policies have led some states down a path of decline. But here in Virginia, common sense conservative leadership has refueled our birth.
I'm not your typical politician, and I never will be.
I don't make excuses. I'm tough and principled, and I never stop working to get things done for you.
I'm Winsome Earl Sears, and I'm running for governor to make life better for every Virginian.
Together, we will preserve Virginia for our next generation. Ever forward.
All right. I thought it was interesting how she highlighted, I'm not your typical politician.
And she's not. I like that she is playing into her strength. That is, to me, what is so, I think what puts a movement behind her, why people get so excited about her, is because she's brave and she will say the things that need to be said and doesn't feel this need to kind of temper her words.
Calibrate every little thing.
Yes. Yeah. Now, occasionally, maybe, like she might say something that's a little like, can a politician actually say that or whatever? But I think it's really great. And the other thing I love is that she actually just often you'll find her literally spewing scripture out of her mouth. It just, it flows out. It's like so natural because it's so much a part of who she is. I'll never forget when she won the lieutenant governor race the next morning. So we had all been out at the sort of victory party the night before. I'm waking up in the hotel room and it's like 6:30 in the morning. She's already doing like the morning, Today Show, one of those, one of the Fox News. I can't remember which outlet it was, but it was like, there she was on national television. And the first thing I heard was scripture. And I thought, yeah, I'm going to like this. I'm going to be good with this.
Well, and at March for Life,
right.
She has just been, at our Virginia March for Life, unashamed of speaking strongly for a biblical case for protecting life.
Yeah, I like that she just doesn't change who she is based on the office she's seeking or the moment that she's in. I think that voters are looking for some of that. So I think she's going to appeal to a lot of people.
And I will just mention, she can be fun to watch because she is just nonplussed whatever's coming at her.
Yeah.
So if you might remember when a prankster stole her gavel, during her first week as lieutenant governor, she just whipped out her heel and started using that.
Using it.
I mean, and then I was thinking of that time she was on Bill Maher.
Excellent interview.
Yeah, I mean, it was just, she was actually funny, which is unusual for a politician.
Yes, I think she took a hard situation. Those are not our friendly outlets necessarily for conservative ideals. And she really did make it fun. So I think that's really great. And I have to mention, that she presides over the Senate right now. So she, I think, has gained a real knowledge base of legislation and watching the liberals do what they do. So I think she has some really good thoughts probably about what needs to turn around. She hasn't had a lot of tie breaks. That's one of the roles of your lieutenant governor. She hasn't had a lot, but she had one funny one. I think it's funny because at the General Assembly, obviously not a bill we follow very closely, but big deal about hunting dogs and regulations on hunting dogs. And that was actually her big tie-break vote was to not regulate the hunting dogs better. So I just thought that was kind of entertaining that it was like that issue actually is what got to a tie-break. But anyway.
But she came out and supported when we had parents there asking for education scholarships or education savings accounts.
That's been her biggest, one of her very biggest championed issues has been educational options for every child. And that's been so helpful to all the work that we've been doing on that.
Yeah. I did just want to get your thoughts on one thing I noticed in the campaign video, and that's when she ended with an emphasis on preserving Virginia for the next generation. What do you think about kind of that's what you're trying to speak to the audience about? Is it, hey, we need to preserve some things for the people coming after us?
I mean, it so much resonates with what we've been talking about around here, and just that the left is they're going for the goal line. I mean, they are pushing us in a direction so aggressively. We talk about the abortion amendment that might be coming to Virginia. That's literally, it's all abortion all the time, right? So this is like they're trying to make an end line play that this is what and I think she gets that, like, we've got to block those kind of. Now, she didn't speak to any initiative, but I think she understands like where the progressive left is taking us. It has to be stopped, and that's in a number of areas. But so I think it's the right kind of message, and I think it was a very upbeat ad.
I mean, where they're taking us is a culture of death and sterilization. And it's not going to be preserving anything. Or any founding principles. So, you know.
And I've always thought she had a leg up. Just, I mean, literally, what do we tell our politicians? What do we want? We want someone winsome. I think it's so funny that she has literally the perfect name to put forward a positive vision. She's blessed with that.
Well, now, the really cool thing about this is with the timing of this whole thing is that it's very relevant because she's speaking at our gala.
She will be at our gala just a couple weeks away. We're getting down to it on September 28th. And we're excited to hear what she has to say, and just kind of be with her that night. And I know folks will want to get their picture with one of the, maybe the only or maybe one of many lieutenant governor, governor candidates. Current lieutenant governor about to try to be governor. So I think it's going to be a great night.
Well, if you want an opportunity to hear an exclusive message from Winsome Sears you aren't going to hear anywhere else, get your tickets now. We're selling individual tickets now for the gala, just a couple of weeks, September 28th, or maybe even less than that by the time this goes live.
Yeah, we're getting tight.
Just look for the Faith Unwavering banner on familyfoundation.org. That's familyfoundation.org. Well, speaking of campaigns. I think we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about the presidential race going on right now, but particularly, Victoria, I did want to give you a chance to respond to all this craziness that's going on right now with President Trump and his recent abortion statements and people just trying to process all of this. And just to bring people up to speed a little bit, the other day he had made this statement about the abortion amendment in Florida that really came pretty darn close to sounding like he was going to vote for the thing, which was disturbing because it's a Roe-style kind of amendment that would have unlimited abortion pretty much throughout the whole pregnancy term. So let's just listen to that clip that got everybody, upset the first time around.
Everyone does.
You
I think
overturned Roe, and you want abortion to be a states' rights issue. In Florida, the state that you are a resident of, there's an abortion-related amendment on the ballot to overturn the 6-week ban in Florida. How are you going to vote on that?
Well, I think the 6 week is too short. It has to be more time, and so and I've told them that I want more weeks.
So you'll vote in favor of the amendment?
I am going to be voting that we need more than 6 weeks.
And then just to add fuel to that whole fire, he made this other statement a few days after that at a campaign stop in Michigan where he talked about IVF, and he was talking about mandating insurance companies to have to pay, as he put it, pay for all costs associated with IVF. And since then, I will say he's walked back the abortion part of that, and we'll play a clip of that in a minute. But what is your take on all of this?
Yeah, I mean, this is a big deal, of course, because A, it's a really important issue to a lot of people, and B, we have, in particular in Florida, this abortion amendment, but actually in 10 states, people are paying attention to these abortion amendments because there are many states dealing with them. So Florida's is interesting because they have solid pro-life law in place right now. So that, this is actually to undo really some pretty good laws. The 6 weeks is about where Florida's law sits right now. And then what's interesting about Florida is it would take a 60% supermajority to actually put this into their constitution. And so people are paying a lot of attention. But here's the thing. There's, it's even affecting us here in Virginia because we're thinking about this. Ours isn't this year, but we know it's coming.
They've introduced the language.
They've introduced the language. So this is we're all very, very tuned into what everybody that gets a microphone says about this because they impact people. So, it's unfortunate he has not been clear and clearly pro-life down to the moment of conception. That's definitely the case.
Well, give us your take on the IVF part real quick.
Yeah, I think IVF is an underdeveloped public discussion is what I think is the reality. Meaning it is it was not even really in the public space for discussion until the Supreme Court decision in Alabama, and then they put a law in and all that. It's really recent. And so I just think politicians, and Trump is not alone, they're just reacting honestly to this overwhelming sentiment of, well, we don't want to deny people to have children, right? That's, if you dumb it down, people are thinking, well, we want everyone to be able to have a child. That actually sounds very pro-life, right? So if you don't dig deep and you don't dive deep into the ethical and moral roots of how IVF is done and all of that, I think lots of politicians are actually saying things that they either won't really do because once you actually move it forward, you're going to realize all these groups are going to come in and educate you on the issue. And I think that's actually what's happening with Trump. I just don't actually think that he's really suggesting, because he's also a very anti-mandate guy. He's actually the opposite. He actually removes mandates typically. And so I think this was a sort of a gut reaction to something, to be totally honest. And I know that you have to be careful because people's words matter and what they say matters. And so I don't want to act like he doesn't mean what he says, but I just want to say this is unlikely to become policy, just even with his reaction.
From a purely political speculation, I just don't understand why these conservative politicians need to go to the lengths that they're going to try to, try to compensate or whatever they're trying to do politically. It's like you could just leave it alone, or it's one thing to talk about the freedom of IVF, which that's not our stance. Would be that we want to have ethics around that, ethical guidelines. Yes. But as President Trump, why can't he just why does he have to go to the mandate language?
Well, it is a mistake that a lot of politicians make, which is they aren't forced to create a new statement on something, and they do, and it creates a news cycle, a brand new news cycle around an issue that actually you don't want to be the news cycle. If you're President Trump, your news cycle should be, you want to stay on your strength issues. That would be for him the border, the economy, crime, like all of those things are where he wants to sit. And so you really actually don't want to create new news on an issue where they don't need to be talking about it.
So he just can't help it.
But he's not the only one that does this. This happens routinely. We see this in politics all the time. And actually, he's usually better than that. But in this case, he definitely, I think, put forward something he didn't need to, and it didn't. Again, it took us off the issues that mattered to him.
Yeah. And it does speak to the greater need in our culture for people, including candidates, to have a life-affirming worldview that is not shallow. That's a need in our culture right now, and he is showing a problem in the bigger culture.
Well, and it really shows the needs for groups like us and those that are like us at the federal level, because we have to help educate these folks and just help them understand issues that are newer and emerging and what all those technicalities. I mean, no one that hasn't been through IVF is expected to be an expert on how it's done, what it means, that's all in pretty new space. And so I really do think I'm very, very thankful for the groups that are at the federal level, groups like us that are at the state level, because these elected officials and candidates need that kind of education. They need us to help them work through these issues so they don't overstep in the wrong direction.
Well, it wouldn't be a bad idea for people to communicate with his campaign
for sure.
about how they feel about these things.
For sure.
But I did want to just play the clip of him stuffing this back on Fox News, and saying that he will in fact vote no.
He's going to do the right thing, which is great on the Florida ballot.
Yeah, so let's just play that clip.
Yes or no on Amendment 4 in Florida?
So I think 6 weeks, you need more time than 6 weeks. I've disagreed with that right from the early primaries. When I heard about it, I disagreed with it. At the same time, the Democrats are radical because the 9 months is just a ridiculous situation where you can do an abortion in the 9th month. And, you know, some of the states like Minnesota and other states have it where you could actually execute the baby after birth. And all of that stuff is unacceptable. So I'll be voting no for that reason.
What did you make of that walk back? Because he is still saying that he doesn't like the, ban on abortions after 6 weeks.
Yeah, he's not where I am on the life issue, and I wish he was. But I am really pleased that he was clear. This was a clearer statement than the first one. I am going to vote no. That's what we needed out of him. And I think it's really important because of the lack of clarity in his previous statement, people could have gotten the wrong idea that he was going to vote the wrong way. And if people are paying attention and following, we could lose votes over that. So I'm really glad that he said, no, I am going to vote no, because it's so extreme. This is the challenge. These amendments, people need to understand, they're not voting on what they want the law to be. So let's say, an elected official wants it to be at 12 weeks. The law is currently 6. Your only other option is all abortion all the time, because that's what they handed you.
Right.
You're not getting to pick in the middle. And so you have to understand that when you go to the ballot, if you're a voter or if you're a candidate speaking about these things. And I think he got that clarity. Like, no, well, I don't necessarily love the current law. I'm disappointed that that's where he is. But this one is really bad. This allows abortion up until the moment of birth. That's terrible.
Yeah. Well, help put that in perspective for us compared to the Harris campaign.
That's the point.
Help put that in perspective with what that's about and what a candidate like Trump needs to do.
Well, she's never waffled on the abortion issue. She is clearly for all abortion at all times, in any circumstance, carte blanche, like voted against, baby born alive. Like, these people on the left, on these extreme positions, need to be called out for what they believe. Because, again, fundamentally, we're not talking about is this 12 weeks or 15 weeks. We're talking about all or 6 weeks.
Okay, she was the first vice president to actually go and visit an abortion clinic, right?
Yes.
A Planned Parenthood.
Yes.
And then it stands out to me that she's not just endorsing these things, but her and the Biden administration targeting pro-lifers.
They saw her as a great spokeswoman, that she could be the champion for reproductive rights, so-called. And so she's been way out front on this. And yes, the Biden administration isn't just, we want abortion to exist. They have come after pro-lifers. They have absolutely, the group that was, that's been prosecuted. I mean, in every way, they are as extreme on this issue as you can be. So when voters think about, do we wish Trump were more pro-life or had said something stronger? Yeah, but again, we're not given what's our ideal candidate. We're given this choice or this choice when we come to the voting box.
I mean, wasn't she the one that went after the guy that tried to expose the cell
David
baby
Daleiden,
parts?
yeah. So when we go all the way
they
back,
went after them legally.
That's exactly right. And we go all the way back to her time as a prosecutor and attorney general in California. She literally went after somebody who simply tried to expose that Planned Parenthood or the abortion industry in general. I can't remember if it was only them. Is literally selling baby body parts. That this is an industry for them, and all he tried to do was help put that forward. And yeah, he has had literally like a decade or something at this point. I mean, years and years and years of being under serious threat. And so, yeah, we have to remember who President Trump is running against.
So along those lines, I am going to kind of narrow in on the elephant in the room question that all of us have. And what in the world do pro-life voters and Christians do with all of this? Because it is confusing to people. I mean, we don't want to support the Biden administration for what you just mentioned, just even how they've been going after schools on this transgender issue, really trying to strong arm schools into infusing into schools this promotion of trans ideology. I mean, that's just way over the top. Unlimited abortion agenda, clear out front, not even trying to hide it. We don't want that. But at the same time, these statements from Trump have been disappointing. So what do we do with all that?
Well, I think we need to remember that we don't get to design our perfect candidate. We don't. Now, I will say this, the Family Foundation, we are absolutely trying to train candidates, recruit good candidates, give them a biblical worldview. So we're doing our part to try to get candidates that we want to vote for, right? That will make us excited to vote. That's the goal. But that's just not always the election. And so the reality is we have to just look at what's literally on our ballot and go, here's this person, here's this person. And life is one critical issue. Of course, for some of us, it is often the top issue we vote on. But it is not the only issue. And you bring this up, it is not the only issue. So even if he's not where you want him to be on life, and you have to look all the way down the line, we're talking about, and you named another big one, what is going to be the future for our kids? And when you think about what LGBT agenda has done to our children and the way that the Biden administration has pushed that down, trying to threaten free and reduced lunch money, if you don't absorb, trying to say that Title IX is interpreted to mean gender identity, which puts all the men into our girls' sports. I mean, that you have to look at all this, and again, of course, the economy, the border, I mean, a voter has to be informed, has to know both candidates all the way down the line. And yeah, I would say we're almost always disappointed because you know what? We live in a fallen world and we're fallen human beings and everybody doesn't perfectly line up with Scripture. And so we have to do the best we can. And we have to remember, we're looking at records. For both of these candidates, they're known quantities. We have President Trump, who was president for 4 years, did 4 years worth of things. We have Vice President Harris, who's been part of the Biden administration, and we can tell what's happened over the last 4 years. So that's what you're comparing. It's actually some elections you don't know what you're working with as much. It's a few campaign statements. In this case, you really know the direction of America under each administration you can choose.
What do we do in the meantime? What do we do with these candidates like President Trump where we want them to feel accountable to the pro-life movement?
We put pressure on, right? So we have the right, just because you have to make a binary choice at the ballot, doesn't mean your voice has to be muted to try to call balls and strikes. That's what we try to do. These are good statements. These are not great statements. These are good positions. These are not. Let's help them. Let's advocate. Let's be in their ear to guide candidates to help them make better decisions and educate them on issues when they aren't all the way there.
Which in a sense did work this time.
Yeah, there were people at the national level, and that's because there was some national pressure from some pro-lifers. And they took a little heat because, again, are you deterring people from voting for a better candidate over a worse candidate? It's hard. You are. It's hard to step out, but they put some pressure on, and I can't tell you why he stepped back. I can't say whether he was always intending to mean that he was still going to end up voting, in the right way in Florida. But the bottom line is they did what I think we do need to do, which is continue to hold our candidates to where they need to be.
Well, I really wanted to hit one more thing today, and that is this appalling piece that came out in the Richmond Times Dispatch, which I thought was really a pretty vicious attack on people standing up for parental rights locally, particularly here in Chesterfield. And it was a column. Now, some of you might remember us talking about the Protect Every Kid rally that happened a few weeks ago, where there were some 200, more than 200 parents, grandparents, students coming out, even some teachers speaking up. It was amazing. And what they did was come out to say to the school district, Chesterfield School District, please stop ignoring our concerns when we're asking you to protect and respect our basic parental rights, especially when it comes to things like school officials giving counseling to kids on these sensitive topics like gender identity, and not even notifying parents that this is happening. We want you to have a policy in place that notifies parents at a basic level, gives them an opportunity to opt out. And really that would be coming in to compliance with what is on the books right now in Virginia law, which is the Education Department's policies on parental rights when it comes to these transgender issues, and protecting kids, but also at the same time respecting parental rights in that, because kids do better when parents are involved. So they're asking for something pretty bottom line here. I mean, it's a low bar, basic respect. I don't know about you, but that does not seem like an unhinged request to me. And yet we see this headline. I'm just going to put this on the screen here. In Chesterfield, here's the headline. In Chesterfield, transgender fear-mongering is the real threat to students. Now, we can kind of take on what the real threat is. But what really stands out to me, are we just going to call any basic speaking up for parental rights fear-mongering at this point?
I think we are when we're from the left. I mean, this is a column written by Michael Paul Williams. He is a pretty far left writer. I can't think of the last time I've agreed with something in his column, but I think this is the point. Every time those in the progressive secular left advocate for something, they are standing up for their rights. They're doing some brave, courageous act. But if it's on our side, it's fear-mongering. And it's very intentional, because if you call a parent that came out to a rally, you say they're fear-mongering, are they going to come out again? Or are they going to feel like, gosh, I've been called a name? Like, it's to silence people.
It really is. And to that point, here's another line from that article. He says, the Protect Every Kid rally is, quote, the latest use of religion as a tool to perpetuate bigotry. I think that's pretty jaw-dropping, sweeping label, because we've now moved beyond just the fear-mongering label to actually painting anyone that happens to have a religious perspective and speaks out for parental rights as a bigot.
Well, it's more than that. It's trying to characterize the whole rally as religious in order to make it seem like you have to be religious to agree with this viewpoint. You don't. That rally is about parental rights. Parental rights, yes, we do. Actually, those of us that are Christians happen to believe that God has held us accountable for our children, that we are responsible. So for some of us, it comes from a place of faith. But for many, many people in society, this is just simply logic. I'm responsible for my child. I have to speak up for them. That's my job. That's why I was put here on earth. They don't have to believe in a God or a higher power or anything to understand that. And so the idea, what he's trying to do is minimize the idea that this is the cultural norm, that this is actually what most people believe, and these are just the groups standing up to represent it, by saying we're a bunch of religious bigots. And yes, the idea that you can't be a person of faith and be in the public square is also what they're trying to do, right? If they can sort of characterize everything that comes out of a faith person's, a person who has faith as bigotry, then you're slowly pushing that person, not just their words, but get them out of the public square, silence those Christians.
Yeah, and it's not just Christians.
No,
I mean, there are other faiths that are,
Yes, you're right. I mean, absolutely. It's not even, I'm speaking from our perspective, but yes, I feel like every single major faith I can think of, whether it's Judaism or Islam, the role of a parent is clearly, I mean, the idea that this is just Christian is ridiculous.
Yeah. Well, and if you watch the actual press conference, which you can watch on our YouTube page, it was the Protect Every Kid press conference in Chesterfield.
I don't remember hearing that much faith in it.
Right. Well, also, the parent, there was a lot of diversity in the parents that were speaking up, and that is not acknowledged at all. So if you go there, you will hear these diverse parents pleading with their school district to just to let us be involved in the educational process on these issues. I mean, they were very winsome and respectful about their requests. If you go and listen yourself to what they were saying, there was nothing unreasonable. I mean, you even had one of the moms, it was a Hispanic mom, saying, look, I had a teacher that did involve me in this, and I was thankful, but your current policy would make that where it couldn't happen.
They're just asking to not be cut out of the process. They are simply saying, I'm the parent, don't do this stuff in the school system without me knowing it. Don't let me not be a part of it because it is my child. I love my child better than any teacher or administrator is ever going to love my child. And so that's all they're saying.
And the focus was not on transgender individuals or students. It was on parental rights, to your point.
Right.
Well, that's not all. I have to cover some other things that this column also went into that I thought were quite outrageous. It goes on to point out that the Family Foundation, which helped parents with this rally, and I will say, we did get called by a parent and, who told us, look, we feel like we're being ignored by the school district. There is a Speak Up Chesterfield team there. Yeah. The leader of the team,
they're trying to get movement, and they asked for help.
The whole team had been trying to go for months and ask for this, and they reached out and said, we need help. Will you help us do a rally? Which when we get requests from parents like that, we will help them. And so that's how this came about. But then, he goes on to say the Family Foundation is a faith-based nonprofit that advocates for policies based on biblical principles. Well, first of all, I'll say that's 100% true. Guilty as charged. We are very upfront that we, are biblically based in our approach.
Yep.
Yeah. But then he takes it to this point. What's troubling, I think, is he goes on to write that such advocacy, meaning biblically based advocacy, quote, places the organization in inherent conflict with the Constitution. I mean, that is quite the statement right there. And then he goes further and says, this is an approach on brand and in an America where Christian nationalism, so we get that label with doubt, Christian nationalism has become a guiding goal of the political right. Now, Victoria, I really would love for you to give us your whole take on this general idea that if you happen to be an individual or a parent with a Christian perspective, you are somehow unconstitutional if you speak out on a civic policy issue.
Yeah, he's trying to imply that if you're a Christian, therefore you want this theocracy is really what it is, that you want the government to tell everyone they must be Christians and they must worship in this exact church. Well, that's exactly the opposite of what our entire nation was founded on, because if you remember, the Church of England was what they were coming here to not have to force on everyone. And literally our founders were, guess what? Christians. I'm going to not speak to their
Christian.
Yeah, I can't say they literally every one of them followed Jesus, but I can tell you that was their pervasive worldview. They were people coming from that. They even infused a lot of that language in our founding documents. So clearly that was their perspective, but they still created a country where we respect everyone's dignity, we respect everybody's choice. That's because we come from a faith where we have a loving God who didn't make us all minions. He could have made a world where everybody had to worship him and we all, no, that's not what our faith actually believes. And also, I have to note this. The thing that doesn't get acknowledged when people make this claim is that everyone steps into the public square with a perspective. Everyone has, now maybe your faith that is your driving reason. It could be your sexual identity. But you're coming with a bias, with a very strong perspective. There is no such thing as a naked public square. There is no such thing as a place where some people show up and they have nothing that would box out another opinion. And it's a competing worldviews. So this idea is absurd. And I get really,
I'm passionate about that. You cannot sideline people because of their perspective. You cannot sideline them because they got help from their church or because they went to a Christian organization for help.
There used to be a real anti-Catholic bias in our country, and there were laws put in saying, okay, we're going to defeat that because that's not appropriate.
And to your point, with this guy's argument, the Founding Fathers would have been banned because they were open about that their perspective was informed.
They talked about providence. They talked about a creator. They understood all these things. And they wouldn't have been able to set up our country, which has been a great model of allowing everybody's ideas.
All right, last but not least, the article levies this charge that I just also want to address, quote, threat of litigation is a form of bullying. Now, that's probably because our attorney, Josh Hetzler, got up and said, he made clear, we will defend parents. If they are put into a corner where their only recourse is legal, we will help them.
Yeah. Well, keep in mind, this is directly, the issue is in direct response to the fact that these counties that have struggled with this and the ones that haven't reversed their policies, a lot of times it's because they're getting bad legal advice in the background from, and I can't speak to Chesterfield's county attorney, but I'm just saying a lot of times they're getting bad legal advice. And so we're having to present attorneys at these rallies to say, if in case your attorney is not telling you there are lawsuits on these things, you need to understand what's going on in Fairfax, that, there's a student suing up in Fairfax. You need to understand there was an assault in Loudoun County. You need to understand in Virginia Beach there was they're not getting the full picture sometimes from their county attorneys. And so we are ensuring that they're getting the whole legal landscape, and these boards get scared. So attorneys don't, if the board is your client, you don't want to get sued. You're trying to avoid litigation. And so if in any way the attorney is trying to steer a board and say, don't do anything because it might trigger litigation, they need to understand it comes from both sides. Just because the ACLU was traditionally the one that was suing, there are lawsuits on the other side now. And so, but it's always, we bully if we share facts. I mean, give me a break.
That's what I was going to say. We never hear them saying that the ACLU is bullying schools.
They walk out there with the Gavin Grimm case all the time, and they make it sound like this, they use that to say this is going to be the definitive case and it's going to trump everything. And then you're going to have other cases that come in under that precedent. Yeah. It's all.
The ACLU is suing Hanover School District right now.
Who's actually in the lawsuit on the other side? Yeah. It's ridiculous. There is litigation on both sides of these issues, and to ignore that is ridiculous. And bullying.
Since you mentioned the Grimm case, he did bring that up in his column, and I just want to point out what our attorneys have told us, that case is very fact specific.
It is.
That case, that school had done a lot with privacy modifications. The student involved had all kinds of documentation and things that had happened, which is not usually the case in most of these situations where you have a more spontaneous situation and not all the privacy protections.
Correct.
So, yeah.
Correct. It is not the case that you can apply that to mean anyone who believes they're any gender can walk into any space and play on any sports team. That's not what the case said, and they use it as if it is. And so, we have to have attorneys there to clarify that too.
Yeah. Well, the bottom line is you cannot villainize parents if they need to take legal recourse, because we all know it is hard to navigate these government school systems. These parents are often outspent, outgunned, and they need outside help with attorneys.
That is why we have the Founding Freedoms Law Center, is because there has to be sometimes an answer to what happens when it is a violation of rights.
Sometimes it's the only response left.
Well, if Chesterfield would actually act.
We don't want that to happen.
We don't want that to happen. We're trying to actually prevent them litigation.
All right. Well, I will say to parents, take heart. You are not alone. There's a reason why people try to smear and intimidate you, and it's because you are having an impact. So don't give up. We're standing behind you. And with that said, I think, did you want to add anything onto that?
No, just don't. Yeah, I would just say don't let Michael Paul Williams be the voice in your head, because it's...
Don't let him be the bully.
Yeah, don't let him bully you.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. Remember, we are stronger when we speak together. If you like what you hear, be sure to share our Virginia Speak Up Virginia playlist. And if you're listening on Spotify or Apple, give us that good review so we can get the word out to more people. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time.